It was an ordinary afternoon at a well-known Los Angeles gym in the early 1970s. The iron clang of weights echoed off the walls, the sharp scent of sweat mixed with the rubber mats underfoot, and everywhere you looked, massive men were pushing their bodies to extraordinary limits. This was the golden age of bodybuilding and strength sports, a time when bigger was considered better, when muscle was mistaken for might, and when the concept of a 135-pound martial artist walking confidently into a room full of professional strongmen would have seemed laughable. But Bruce Lee was never the kind of man who cared about what seemed laughable to others. On that particular afternoon, one of the gym's regular heavyweights, a man celebrated for his extraordinary strength, his imposing frame, and his commanding presence, noticed Bruce Lee warming up in a corner. The strongman stood well over 6 feet tall and weighed close to 300 pounds of muscle. He had competed at the highest levels of strength sports, had broken records, had been celebrated in magazines and on television. By every conventional standard, he was the picture of physical dominance. When he saw Bruce Lee lean, compact, barely 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighing what most bodybuilders considered a warm-up snack, the strongman could not resist. The laughter came first, loud and genuine. Then came the words, sharp and dismissive, meant to carry across the gym floor so everyone could hear. "What is this little guy going to do? He looks like a kid who got lost on his way to a swimming class." A few of the surrounding men chuckled. Some looked away, embarrassed by the cruelty. None of them moved to stop it. Bruce Lee heard every word. He always did. But rather than flinch, rather than shrink, rather than offer an apology for his existence in a room where he did not look like he belonged, he simply smiled. It was not the smile of a man pretending nothing had happened. It was the smile of a man who already knew how the story ended. The strongman, emboldened by the laughter of the room, and perhaps genuinely curious whether this small, wiry man was truly serious about training alongside professional athletes, pressed further. He walked over to Bruce Lee and issued what he clearly believed was an unanswerable challenge. He flexed his bicep, a mountain of muscle that most men could not fully wrap both hands around, and told Bruce Lee that if he could move him even a single inch from where he stood, he would personally apologize to everyone in the gym for his mockery. If he could not, Bruce would admit in front of everyone that he had no business being there. The gym went quiet. Weights were set down. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Every eye turned to the two men standing across from each other. One a mountain, one what appeared to be a molehill. On paper, on the surface, by every metric the physical world recognizes, this was not a contest. It was a foregone conclusion. And yet, something in the air made no one laugh anymore. Something in the stillness of Bruce Lee's posture, in the calm steadiness of his eyes, in the total absence of fear on his face, told the more perceptive observers in that room that they might be about to witness something that defied the logic of the physical world. Bruce Lee studied the man for a long moment. He cracked his knuckles, rolled his neck slowly from side to side, and looked up, not down, never down, at the giant before him. Then he said, calmly and without a trace of aggression, "You should probably brace yourself." The strong man laughed again. His friends laughed. And then Bruce Lee moved. What followed was not a prolonged struggle. It was not a dramatic back-and-forth battle of wills that lasted several minutes. It was something far more unsettling for the strongman and far more instructive for everyone watching. In a fraction of a second, with a technique so precise, so explosively delivered, and so perfectly placed that witnesses later struggled to describe it in any satisfying way, Bruce Lee generated a force that moved the 300-pound man not 1 inch, not 2 inches, but sent him stumbling backward several full steps, barely catching himself on a nearby weight bench before falling to the floor. The room was completely silent, not the silence of boredom or confusion, but the deep, ringing silence of witnessing something that could not be explained by the rules everyone in that room had been operating under their entire lives. The strongman sat on the edge of the bench, breathing hard, staring at this compact, unassuming man who looked, if anything, entirely relaxed, as if what he had just done required no more effort than opening a door. After a long pause, the strongman looked up at Bruce Lee with an expression that had entirely replaced the mockery that had been there before. It was something closer to bewilderment, and beneath that, something that might have been the beginning of genuine respect. "What was that?" he asked. Bruce Lee smiled again, the same smile as before, knowing and unhurried. "That," he said, "is what happens when you mistake size for strength." What Bruce Lee demonstrated that day in the gym was not magic, though it appeared magical to those who witnessed it. It was the product of an extraordinary, obsessive, years-long scientific investigation into the mechanics of the human body and what it was truly capable of generating. Bruce Lee did not simply train. He studied. He read extensively in physiology, biomechanics, and physics. He applied those studies to his training with a methodological rigor that more closely resembled a research scientist than an athlete. The technique that stunned the strongman was a variation of what Bruce Lee called his one-inch punch, a strike delivered from the smallest possible distance that somehow generated force far exceeding what the laws of leverage and muscle mass seemed to permit. The secret, as researchers and martial arts scientists would later confirm, lay not in muscle size, but in neuromuscular coordination, the ability to fire every relevant muscle group in the body in perfect sequence, from the feet through the legs, hips, torso, shoulder, arm, and wrist, creating a kinetic chain that accumulated and transferred energy with almost no loss at any link. In simple terms, while the strongman had trained his muscles to be enormous, Bruce Lee had trained his nervous system to be precise. A large muscle generating force inefficiently will always lose to a smaller, perfectly coordinated system, delivering that force with zero wasted movement. It is a principle as old as physics itself, but one that most people, most of the time, never bother to internalize because it is so much easier to judge a book by its cover, a man by his size, and a fighter by his weight class. This story from the gym was not an isolated incident in Bruce Lee's life. It was a recurring chapter in a larger story, one that began almost from the moment he was born. Bruce Lee Jun Fan arrived in San Francisco on November 27, 1940, while his father was on a performing tour with the Cantonese Opera. He grew up in Hong Kong during a turbulent era of war, occupation, and social upheaval. From an early age, he was small for his age, slight of build, and possessed of a restless, combustible energy that made him a frequent target for the larger boys in his neighborhood. His father, recognizing that his son's temperament and size would inevitably put him in physical danger, enrolled the young Bruce in Wing Chun Kung Fu training under the legendary Ip Man when Bruce was 13 years old. It was here that the foundational philosophy of Bruce Lee's martial development was first planted. Wing Chun is built for the smaller practitioner. Its techniques are designed not to overpower but to redirect, not to match force with force but to use an opponent's force against them. For a small boy who would never be the biggest person in any room, it was a revelation. But Bruce Lee did not stop there. Unlike many martial artists of his era who devoted themselves entirely to one style and treated its traditions as sacred and unquestionable, Bruce Lee was constitutionally incapable of accepting any system on faith alone. He questioned everything. He tested everything. He borrowed from boxing, from fencing, from judo, from wrestling, from Western philosophy, from Eastern thought. The martial art he eventually developed, Jeet Kune Do, or the way of the intercepting fist, was less a style than a philosophy. Use what works, discard what does not, and never let tradition blind you to truth. Those who trained with Bruce Lee in the years before and after the gym incident often spoke of his training regime with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. He trained every single day, without exception, without off-seasons, without the comfortable allowances most athletes made for themselves. He woke early, ran several miles before most of the world was awake, then moved through a rigorous program of resistance training, flexibility work, and martial technique that lasted for hours. In the evenings, he would often train again. His grip strength, which he developed through specialized exercises with equipment he often designed himself, became legendary. Witnesses reported that a handshake from Bruce Lee felt like placing your hand inside of ice. His forearms, built through thousands of repetitions of specific isolation exercises, were disproportionately muscled compared to the rest of his lean frame. His abdominal muscles, subjected to daily work that he considered the foundation of all power generation, were described by his friend and student Dan Inosanto as like hitting a wooden board. Yet none of this was the point of Bruce Lee's training. And this was the crucial misunderstanding that the strongman in the gym, and so many others like him, had fallen into. The point was never size. The point was never the visual impressiveness of the body. The point was function. The point was what the body could actually do when called upon, and how efficiently and completely it could do it. Every exercise Bruce Lee performed was in service of this single, uncompromising goal: make the body a perfect instrument for the delivery of force. Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973, at the age of just 32. The official cause of death was cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, triggered by an adverse reaction to a pain medication. He left behind a wife, 2 children, a handful of completed films, an unfinished masterpiece, and a legacy that has only grown more powerful and more widely recognized in the 5 decades since his death. He is not remembered merely as a martial artist, though he transformed that world permanently. He is not remembered merely as a film star, though his films changed the way Asian men were portrayed on screen worldwide. He is remembered as something rarer and harder to categorize: a teacher. The lesson he taught the strongman in that gym, the lesson he had been teaching, through demonstration, through writing, through film, through every public and private interaction of his life, was a lesson that applied far beyond martial arts and far beyond the physical world. It was a lesson about the nature of true capability, about the difference between appearance and substance, about what it means to be genuinely prepared for the challenges the world places before you. Size, wealth, title, reputation, rank. These are the currencies most people use to measure power and readiness. They are the things that cause a 300-pound strongman to laugh at a 135-pound martial artist warming up in a corner of a gym. They are the things that cause employers to overlook the quiet, relentless worker in favor of the louder, more visually impressive one. They are the things that cause nations to underestimate individuals, majorities to underestimate minorities, and the established to underestimate the new. Bruce Lee's answer to all of this was always the same, and it was always delivered not in words, though he had plenty of powerful words to offer, but in demonstration. You want to know what I am capable of? Watch. You want to dismiss me because of what I look like? Go ahead, but be prepared, when the moment of truth arrives, to sit on the edge of a weight bench catching your breath and staring at the floor, reconsidering everything you thought you knew about how the world works. Perhaps the most enduring of Bruce Lee's many articulations of his philosophy came in a television interview when he was asked to describe his approach to martial arts and to life. His answer has since been quoted, reprinted, recited, and applied to contexts ranging from combat sport to business strategy to personal development. It is worth returning to in the context of what happened in that gym, because it explains not just what Bruce Lee did that day but why, and what it meant. Empty your mind, he said. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend. The strong man who mocked Bruce Lee that day was not water. He was a boulder, impressive, immovable in appearance, but ultimately fixed, rigid, and incapable of adapting to what was placed before him. Bruce Lee, lean and fluid and in perpetual motion both physically and intellectually, was water. And water, given enough time and enough focus, carves through even the hardest stone. People who were present in that gym on that afternoon have said, in various retellings over the years, that the strongman's expression as he picked himself up from the weight bench was one they never forgot. Not anger, not embarrassment, exactly, though there was certainly some of that. Something more like the look of a man who has discovered, late in life, that a fundamental assumption he has been operating under, one so basic he never even thought to question it, was wrong. That look, more than the physical demonstration itself, was perhaps the most important thing that happened in that gym, because the strongman, to his credit, did not react with hostility. He did not try to save face by dismissing what had happened or finding excuses. He honored the bet he had made. He stood up, looked around at the silent gym, and publicly apologized, not just to Bruce Lee, but to everyone present who had heard his mockery. And then, according to multiple accounts, he asked Bruce Lee if he would be willing to teach him. Bruce Lee, who bore no grudges, who had made his point and had no interest in prolonged humiliation, agreed. That exchange, the mockery, the demonstration, the apology, the request to learn, is a perfect small drama of what Bruce Lee's entire life stood for. He never sought to humiliate. He sought to demonstrate. He never sought to dominate. He sought to educate. He knew, with the quiet certainty of a man who had spent his entire conscious life proving it, that the body's greatest weapon was not size. It was not strength in the conventional sense. It was not aggression or intimidation. It was knowledge, the deep, tested, applied knowledge of what the body could truly do when trained with intelligence, precision, and complete commitment. More than 50 years after his death, the world continues to return to Bruce Lee, to his films, his philosophy, his training methods, his quotations. Athletes study his approach to physical development. Philosophers cite his writings on the nature of the self. Filmmakers study the way he moved on camera. Business leaders quote his aphorisms in boardrooms. And martial artists everywhere in the world, in every style and discipline, trace the transformation of their art, its opening up, its willingness to borrow and evolve and question, to the influence of one small, extraordinarily powerful man who once walked into a gym full of giants and reminded them all that they had been measuring the wrong things. The world's strongest man mocked Bruce Lee for being small. He instantly regretted it, not just because of what happened next, but because of what it revealed about the smallness of his own understanding. And that, in the end, is the most enduring lesson of all. The moment you judge another person's potential by their appearance alone, you have already lost. You just may not know it yet.